there is a beautiful place where everything looks better and you feel amazing. It's close by and open to everyone. All you need to do is move. Move your mind with ASICS. ASICS. Sound mind, sound body.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to Mental Health Awareness Month. The topic of this conversation is how to find your people. We are in a loneliness epidemic that makes us feel disconnected to not only ourselves, but to others, especially post-pandemic. We've seen that arise for every single human, right? We're disconnected. We don't know how to communicate. We don't know how to connect to others. And so this conversation is going to first normalize that experience. And second, hopefully give you some inspiration when you're ready to connect to not only yourself, but to your community and how to develop that community. So my name is Dr. Nina Paulinet. I'm a business consultant. I have a practice where I see individuals and couples, and I help them to connect to their bodies, to themselves emotionally, and also to their spirit. I am joined by a wonderful guest, a beautiful human, an incredible athlete, a rock star, Emma Bates. I'm going to have her introduce herself in 2 seconds. But I also want to say that I am an advisor for Wondermind as well. And it's a job that I really enjoy because it's my opportunity to participate in something that really matters in order to destigmatize mental health, which is important to my heart. So happy to be here today. Emma, thank you so much for being here. Most people know who you are, but I'd love for you to introduce yourself to the audience today.
Yeah, my name is Emma Bates. As Nina said, I am a professional runner for ASICS. I specialize in the marathon specifically. So I am alone with my thoughts for a long time, 26.2 miles to be exact. And I train out in Boulder, Colorado. I've been out here for a few years, and it's just an amazing experience to be able to not only do what I love, but share it with other people, especially kind of the mental side. So, running is very physical, but it's equally as mental. So happy to be here.
Wonderful. Thank you, Emma. So let's just start with how well known you are in terms of these race recaps on Instagram. So can you tell me more about how that started and how do you feel about that it's been so popular and everyone's been kind of tuning in to these race recaps?
Yeah, I first started the race recaps on Instagram to kind of reflect on my journey throughout the marathon. So my first marathon was in 2018. It was at the US Championships, and I learned so much throughout that experience, not only about myself physically, but about myself mentally and kind of how to navigate not just running, but life in general. So I really wanted to share that with people. And it was more just a personal journal for me, but it really resonated with a lot of people. And I feel like the vulnerability that I've kind of attached to my running has really just hit home with people, and they can really connect with it and understand that we all go through the same things. We are all feeling the same way, not just, in running, but just in life in general, and kind of the different, challenges that we face throughout our journeys in whatever we're doing. So I'm just really happy that I can not only connect to runners, but also just people in, the greater world. So I'm really happy that it's taken off the way it has, and I didn't expect it at all.
That's amazing. Well, when you're talking about kind of connecting to not only the running community, but all sorts of communities, I think about myself. I'm not a runner at all, but what I connected to in your race recaps are just sort of the confidence that you had. And I was like, wow, I want to do that too. It just makes you feel inspired. And something you hit on that's so important is that piece of vulnerability. Where does that come from in terms of your willingness to share your journey, share your struggles, and also share your accomplishments? Because from the outside world, that makes me feel more connected to you when you're able to share vulnerably. But I know that's hard for a lot of people. So how did you get to a point where being vulnerable was okay for you to do?
Yeah, I think I started being vulnerable with people that were closest to me. So my family and my friends, and just realizing how much better I felt about myself and how I was able to kind of look inward more by sharing all of these feelings, and kind of the reciprocal nature of, you share your vulnerability and your family and friends start to share theirs, and you kind of feel so much more connected. And so I wasn't really anticipating kind of sharing all of that via social media. But once I did, it hit home to so many people that, like, you can be vulnerable in such a public space and get so much support and so much love for that. And I felt so much better once I, put all of these words of, kind of anxiety and the struggles that I go through, because it speaking it out makes you realize that you can kind of like focus in on it and tackle it in your own way. And I've been able to really kind of pinpoint my strengths and my weaknesses through kind of sharing things with people via social media. And so social media is a great tool to kind of get to that point of, kind of connectedness, and talking with people a little bit more about things that maybe you didn't realize that you kind of had going on internally.
I love that you're mentioning the anxiety piece, because of course at Wondermind, that's what we talk about. We talk about feelings, we talk about emotions, and there's a reason for that, right? Because the more that we're connected to our emotions, the more connected we feel to ourselves. And for many of us, emotions are really scary. Maybe we feel a little anxious or we feel a little bit overwhelmed, and we may not want to face it. And so that may turn into distracting ourselves, maybe not connecting in ways that feel generative to us, because we're not connecting to those emotions. And so let's talk a little bit just about how you're doing right now, because throughout our lifespan, of course, we have the good, we have the happy feelings, but also we go through difficult moments too. So I don't know, what space are you in right now today?
I feel really connected to myself. And I think that's when you feel your happiest, is when you kind of know exactly what you're intending to do. So living with intention. So just kind of like knowing what each day is kind of hold, and also not being stagnant in that, kind of allowing the world to kind of sink in, and be open to kind of the changes that are being made. So I think I just give so much gratitude to my life also. And I feel like that really helps propel me forward, is like just knowing how much I have in this world and how lucky I am to be doing the things that I'm doing, and to kind of reflect that way. And then be able to go forward and be confident in that this is where I need to be. This is where I want to be. So that's kind of where I'm at right now. So it's a good place to be.
And again, the topic of the conversation is loneliness and how to find our people. And the reason why Emma and I are first discussing, you and I are discussing this idea of how to connect to ourselves, is that's the first piece of loneliness, is that many of us feel disconnected from ourselves, how we're feeling. And the deeper we can get into connection with ourselves, the deeper relationships we can have on the outside of ourselves. So let's kind of navigate a little bit to the left here and talk more about community. So you are a part of Team Boss in Boulder, Colorado, and also a part of the greater community of ASICS. I'd love for maybe if you could just touch on the community of Team Boss first, because that's like your most immediate connection to other athletes. What's that been like for you?
This has been an incredible team to be on. It's mainly women, which it's funny because I've been on teams with women, and I've always kind of felt like just we're really in competition with one another. And I feel like people are like jealous, or I don't know, there's just a lot of like weird feelings when you get a bunch of competitive women into one room together. But this team has proven to be so many amazing people just individually, and they all are so confident in who they are and what they do, that I feel like I can be confident in what I do. So it's just such an uplifting environment. And I feel like I was just kind of surviving in the other environments that I was in team wise, but this environment I'm able to actually thrive. So like I feel so supported by all of my teammates. I feel like I can support them just as equally. And it's just such a good reciprocal nature of just like uplifting one another and empowering one another. So it's really wonderful.
It's good when you can walk away from being a part of a community where like you're feeling good, like especially as you're talking about these are women that inspire me. That's a big clue to what feels good and what doesn't. Is like, how are you walking away from these communities that you're connecting to? For me, I just had a baby 3 months ago, and so my community is a lot of other birth individuals that like either had a baby recently or in the past 5 years. It's nice to have those people that you can just text and you don't have to do the pleasantries. Like I don't have to go through like, okay, so how are you doing? How's your partner? How's your kids? I could just be like, the baby's crying. What do I do? And they'll be like, okay, here's the first step. Here's the second step. So it's nice to really have communities where you feel comfortable to just kind of dive in. What do you think it is about the community of Team Boss, particularly where you feel like you can be your true self?
I think it's just really like whenever I am doing well, I feel like so much support and like I feel like my teammates are my cheerleaders. And again, like my light is never dimmed when I'm around them. Like, again, they just kind of like build me up more and more and more. And I feel so confident as not just a runner, but just as a female and like going out into the space with other women in general. It's like, I feel like we can all support each other and still kind of rise in our own way. So that's been really spectacular to see in that kind of environment that I have, the community that I have. You can kind of bleed it into the rest of the world, kind of uplift women in the same way. So it's really great in that respect.
That's amazing. And even as you're talking, I was thinking about like sometimes it's not even intentional for some individuals, but they can make us feel small or not worthy. And it's because of that other person's, maybe it's their insecurity. We don't know for sure, but it's something that makes us feel uncomfortable when we're in connection to this person. It's like, this doesn't feel good to me. Every time I share my X accomplishment, this person isn't really there to celebrate with me. Maybe they're doing the exact opposite. And that's, I think, a shared experience. We've all gone through some kind of dynamic like that, where it's like, I'm not feeling good after I leave this connection, or wow, I had that really exciting event happen and my friend didn't even say congratulations. How do you step forward and move away from those types of relationships that make us feel small? I think a lot of us deal with that and we're like, we don't even know the first step to maybe slowly walking away from those friendships or relationships.
Yeah, it's really learning how to trust yourself and to kind of trust your instincts and to trust your gut. And that's kind of where I go back to like the physical nature of, do you feel unsettled? And if that is true, then you kind of need to set boundaries. Either you need to set boundaries with people, talk to people, communicate that this isn't how you want to be feeling or how you want to be treated, or you just need to completely remove yourself from that situation. And so I've had those instances where I've, felt that way in an environment where I felt like very confined to a space that I couldn't get out of. And so I didn't know what I was going to do after leaving this situation, but I knew I needed to get myself out for my own health, for my own self-worth. I knew that this wasn't it. So I didn't know what I was going to do, but I knew to just completely just step away from that.
Yeah, I like the fact that you're bringing up the idea of just maybe offering the conversation first. If it's a friend that maybe you feel safe enough to connect to and share how you feel, maybe that's the first step to say, okay, that didn't make me feel good. Let me explain why, using maybe I statements. But if that person is responding in a way that doesn't feel good to you, maybe they continue to make you feel small. They're not taking the feedback. Maybe they put it back on you where it makes you feel even worse for bringing it up. Then those are the times that maybe we, like you were saying, Emma, step away from those relationships. Of course, wishing that person well, but knowing that maybe that's not the kind of person that we might want in our close community, in our close circle. Like you said, it takes stepping into your boundary work. It also takes you telling yourself exactly what you did, that like, hey, this isn't worth my bringing down my self-worth. There's a difference between envy, which I feel like we all want to feel in our circle. Like you want to be in an inspiring circle where some things that your friends are doing, you're like, wow, that's pretty cool. But we can communicate the envy, right? And still be like, hey, I would love that opportunity, but I'm glad you have it. And I can't wait to watch you in X race. And I can't wait to cheer you on. So there's a difference between that envy that maybe you feel in your circle because they're so inspiring, and that person making you feel bad, making you feel like you're not enough, which we definitely don't want in our circle. So that's cool that you've managed to get through that over time and found some skills or tactics that kind of really work, especially when it comes to dynamics with people, because that's the one thing that I think is hard for everyone in some respect, is just connecting to others. You can only control what's happening for yourself, but not for another person. So, and even then, we can't really control everything for ourselves anyway. So, all right. So we're going to talk a little bit more about community and connection. So a lot of us have more than one community. Of course, you have Team Boss, you have the ASICS community, you have your family, your friends outside of the running circle. So tell me more about these different communities and why they all serve you.
ASICS is a big one just because I feel, value me as more than just an athlete. And they have, I work for them. They're, my employer, but I feel like they care about me as a person before my performances. And so that's something that has really helped me to step into who I am. And ASICS means sound mind, sound body. And so that's what they care about, is, being a whole balanced person. And so focusing on what you need to focus on in order to get to where you want to be. So kind of going through those little steps to get to the performance level of things. But it takes time. So they have believed that I will take the time, and they have been so patient with me. And I feel like that's my friends and family too. They didn't understand it for a very long time. I'm the only runner in my family. So it was very odd. It was very strange. It was an environment that they'd never experienced before. But they knew I cared so much about it. I had so much passion for it. And they saw how I grew as a person and how confident I became in this world. So doing something that you're so passionate about and having the support of everybody around you is tantamount to, accomplishing those goals that you set for yourself. And so whatever that may be, just having that community of space where you're not just being supported, but you're supporting them. And that relationship, that kind of back and forth, I know running isn't the end all be all. I have people, so many friends going to school to get their PhD, and it's so cool to like be in the same space and like be so driven and motivated in what we care about and be able to share that drive. And so that's something that I really hold dear, is like all the people in my space that aren't into running. They're just like into, things that make them a better person. And so that's kind of the people that I kind of seek out or try to hold close as much as possible.
I love that. It's good vibes. Like all the communities are really in a space where they're willing to cheer you on, but also you're cheering them on too. It is a reciprocal relationship, and we don't have to have just one community. I know for me too, it's the same. I have like my community of parent friends. I have my community of like the people I went to grad school with, or I have my family, all my support people. But sometimes I have like a group of friends that I'll just go to a stand-up comedy show with because I love humor. That's a big piece of like my life that I really want to sustain. And maybe my closest friend may not want to do that, but I have a community that I can do that with. Or I know you also love music. Concerts is a big one for me. So I have a community that's like wanting to go to concerts and seeing the best shows out there. It's like nice to kind of have different people to do certain things with. Yeah, maybe we have a few individuals in our life that we can do everything with, but sometimes you just have a community that you just do one thing with. Do you have anything like that where you're like, oh, I just hang out with this community for this specific thing?
Yeah, I mean, I think I love music, so just like going to concerts or going to shows, it's so fun to like just immerse yourself into something that you don't really know that much about. Like I'm such an expert on running, but I need to get away from running sometimes to again have that balance. And so yeah, kind of being in those different communities for things that kind of fill your cup, and
Mhm.
be again a balanced person. And so
Mhm.
just trying to hit all of those points, and you have to seek those people out. You have to like
Yeah.
be uncomfortable and step out of your comfort zone, and like we were talking about like going and doing something on your own. Like that's really important to kind of like experience something that you can do and like either go to a concert or go backpacking, by myself. And it's such a great way to ground myself and kind of look inward and be in my own space. So that's really important. So people are also important, but again, like having that balance of, your alone time and looking in.
Right. And I think that what you're bringing up is really important, that loneliness is only a perceived disconnection to other people and to ourselves. And so, what you're bringing up is so important, that we can be alone and in solitude and not feel lonely at all. We can feel so deeply connected to ourselves that we don't need another person. Like you were saying, the backpacking or hiking, mindful walking, those are all experiences that we can do on our own, and we don't necessarily have to feel lonely doing it. It's only when we're feeling that there's sort of this perceived lack of social support that we may start to feel like, I'm feeling a little lonely. Um, Emma, do you have any experiences in your life where you felt like, I've I really was lonely in this moment? Like looking back, I can see that I needed more social connection. I needed more support. So, for example, many of us felt that during the pandemic. We were feeling more isolated, alone, and also lacking connection. Maybe we were able to FaceTime our friends, but it's really maybe not feeling the same as like being present with someone. But yeah, that's just an example. Do you have any examples of times in your life where you've actually felt like, oh, wow, like, I'm feeling a little lonely right now?
I think actually the loneliest I've ever been was when I was living in a city of a lot of people. So I was living in Boston for a few years, and that was actually when I felt so alone. And I was seeing people every day. I was, immersed in the running community there, but I never felt a connection that was meaningful to me, at least. And I think living in a city also, I'm not able to do the things that matter to me most, like the backpacking, the hiking. And so I just felt like I wasn't it was like a tug and pull of like who I thought I should be and who I actually am. And I felt like I had to live this certain life in order to accomplish what I wanted to accomplish. And so I kind of forced being in that environment for probably too long. And I became very lonely, even though I had all these people around me.
Thank you for sharing that, because many of us might feel shame around the loneliness. Like, I may be the only one. I had this time in my life that just didn't make sense in terms of how I was connecting to myself, how I was connecting to other people. And I like the fact that you are so open about that experience, because it makes us all feel more not only connected to you, but connected to the fact that like we all feel that sometimes. Um, how did you get out of it? I know that you've mentioned even in some of our past conversations just around like sometimes you just gotta fly, but it takes a lot of guts, right? When you don't know the next step. But what was that like for you to kind of decrease the loneliness you were feeling and listen to your inner compass?
Yeah, I think, it just felt like I was beating my head against the wall. Like, I never felt, like I was able to really breathe. Like, it almost felt like I was drowning. So I felt like I couldn't take a deep breath and feel relaxed. So even, like, trying to do yoga or meditating or anything like that, I wasn't able to be in that moment. And so I just knew that this must not be it. I'm doing all the things that like I thought were necessary in order to kind of grow as a person. And just kind of looking around me, I realized that this just wasn't the space to kind of help me do that. I just felt like I was surviving and I want to thrive. So where do I need to go? Where do I need to be? I need to be close to nature. I need to, have those kind of things that I can do alone, and feel so fulfilled. So again, the backpacking is such a huge one for me. Painting, just having the space to like be creative and just find myself again. So I just felt really lost. And I think that's kind of like the drowning feeling of like, you just feel like your head is underwater. You can't get to the surface. And it's just such an unsettling feeling. So that's once I realized that, it was incredibly scary to like not know what I was going to do next, not know if I would have a paycheck, not know if I'd find anybody to, share time with. I ended up moving off grid in Idaho because I thought like I just needed to be alone, but that proved to not be the case. And actually moving off grid and kind of being on my own helped me to kind of reflect and realize that I do actually need people, but to be picky about those people and to know kind of what I look for, the qualities that really help me to be my best version of me, and to not settle for people that like aren't going to, again, fill my cup and make me feel good about myself. And so again, the reciprocal nature is so important. I mean, having a relationship with somebody that is just so supportive of you, you're so supportive of them, admiring what they do, and it really helped to put myself out there and not know, but just know exactly what I'm looking for in that space.
I like that you're sharing the difference between like at the first piece was about connecting to all of these, you're in a city environment, there's people everywhere, feeling disconnected to self. And then also saying like, okay, I need the exact opposite of this, which was like going to Idaho and having this more of like a solitude environment, knowing that you needed maybe a little bit of both. Like you were saying, you're like, I need these deep connections that are important to me. I don't need a ton of people, but I need enough community to make me feel connected. And I also need moments of solitude in order for you to deeply connect to yourself. I was thinking as you were sharing just around my own experiences, I love to do long distance walking, not running, but walking. And it's the time when I'm in nature that I feel most grounded within myself. And I get the most creative ideas. Like I'll come out of that walk with like 3 or 4 different ideas for either professionally or personally. And it's just through that time where I can start to feel a little bit inspired and I'm not around anyone else's energy or any other people that might be influencing me in certain ways. And so it's nice that you can have that path of being on your own and connected to yourself, but also to have your community. And I think it takes, like you were saying, it takes a few moments of disconnection in order for us to figure out what makes us feel connected. But I'd love to hear your feedback on that. Like what helped you get to that space of like, okay, this feels good.
Yeah, I think again, just being so honest with yourself. Whenever I'm around people that make me that fill my cup, that make me feel good, I feel so relaxed. I feel like after spending time with them, I don't feel drained of energy. I'm able to be 100% me. And I think that's really important, to be so authentically yourself. And if people around you aren't, if you're not able to feel that way, if you're not able to express yourself, again, having that inspiration, if you're not inspired by things around you, then what are we even doing? I think that's what life is all about, is like getting excited and, motivated and inspired by things. So I think that's the biggest way that I found my people and my environment was I came to Boulder and I didn't know if I was going to be on a team or surrounded by anybody that was like-minded, but I was so open to everything, and I just really honed in on how I felt about it and the energy that people gave me, and that energy is so important. And so it's hard to really express what the energy feels like, but I feel think it is just, again, not feeling drained at the end of, a certain situation. Like running is a lot of energy, but I still love it and I'm so excited about it. And I feel more energized in a lot of ways. And that's how the people around me make me feel.
I love that. I was thinking for myself, what makes me feel most connected to other people. And for me, it's a deep sense of presence with the next person or whatever person is in front of me. Even in this conversation that we're having today, I feel totally locked into what you're saying and connecting to what you have sort of like presented in this conversation. And I'm not really thinking about like, oh, what does Emma think of me? Or like, is this okay? Or am I saying the right thing? Right. I'm able to be truly present with you. And that's kind of what I have with friends and community outside of this conversation, is just sort of like, I can cry if I want to cry. Like for some of my friends, I'm like, I just need a good cry right now. And they're there for me. They're there to hear me, to listen to me, and I'm there for them. Exactly like you're saying, it's very reciprocal. And also going back to the point you're mentioning just about feeling like you feel safe enough to be vulnerable with these people. That's something that I kind of tune into. Like, do I feel like I can really be myself with this person, or am I in my head? And if I'm present, that means that this is a good connection. This is something that I'd want to pursue and continue after that interaction. So let's talk a little bit about interests, because of course, being an athlete, running is your interest and it's also your profession. But I'm just curious to hear more about like, what are some other interests that you have in terms of your values? Like, how do you sink into like what else you're interested in and then find community in those spaces?
Yeah, running is so important to me, but I also just care so much about growing as a person. So I try to learn something new all the time. So whether that be with music or art or something that I've never even thought about, like I love just kind of going into my phone in the morning and looking up a fun fact, and just like it can be so silly, but just learning something is really important to me. And again, it makes me feel like I'm not so stagnant, like I'm just kind of like just immersing myself into the world and kind of taking it in as it comes. So just trying to just be open to whatever kind of comes along. And that may be going to like a Broadway show, or that may be going to a rock concert. Like I'm not like, I love kind of the whole spectrum of things. And so it's really fun to put yourself out of, the typical box that you typically have. And that's running for me. So just trying to go in and be uncomfortable, but like, if it's something that other people care about, they feel comfortable. So I feel like those environments are kind of fun to just kind of like throw yourself into, because they love this so much. Like if somebody were to come into my space of running, like I want to make them feel comfortable, and I love it so much and I want them to love it. So that's kind of how I view going into other interests. It's like, maybe I've never done this before, but I think that anybody wants people to kind of be into what they're into. So it's really fun to again, put yourself into those positions and see kind of how people react or relate to you. I think we all know that we can be uncomfortable in things that we've never done before. So I think just kind of being vulnerable and telling people like, I've never done this before, but I'm here. And if you can kind of like guide me throughout this entire process, that would be awesome. And people are really receptive to that and are excited to kind of teach you something new.
Emma, you hit on so many good points just in that statement. Like, I have so many more questions for you. So you were first talking about this idea of wonder. And I think that's just a good general mindset. I know they're doing a little bit more research on that now, just around like coming into a new activity, feeling like, I wonder what will happen if I go and seek out this activity, or I wonder how I'll feel if I try, I don't know, ballet dancing for the first time. But just like going into it just with curiosity can really help us, especially if we're feeling like, I don't even know what my values are. I don't know what my interests are. Again, we're speaking post-pandemic, where like we were all just kind of, well, I'm exaggerating, but just staring at a wall for years. So it's like, it's nice for us to kind of like reevaluate, okay, what are my values and what matters? And that takes kind of getting, like you said, out of your comfort zone. So I wanted to talk a little bit about turning the volume down on your inner critic. So sometimes we feel uncomfortable in new spaces and that voice comes up like, oh, should you do that activity? You're not good at it. Or don't you think you're going to be awkward if you get into that community? Or if you put yourself out there, these people may not like you. So we all have that inner voice that comes up for us. It's called the inner negative bias. So it is a shared human experience, but my question is just how do you turn the volume down on that voice and continue to pursue these new activities?
I guess it's like asking yourself, what's the worst that can happen if you do try this new activity? And it's like if I am bad at it, what is it going to change? I just may not do this again, or maybe I'll come back and try again and see if I'm better at it. I think we all think that everybody's watching us all the time. Uh, and whenever we do something new, again, it's like a fish out of water, but I think people appreciate the fact that you're trying. And that's, again, like I put myself into the shoes of somebody that's never run before. And I don't want them to feel like they can't do something. If they want to come to a practice or want to come run, it's like we can all do this. Like this is something that I want to share, my experiences and your experiences in. It may be different at first, but we can kind of come to that same like conclusion of we enjoy this and we want to get better at this. And I think that's just giving yourself some grace in that, like, maybe you're not going to be so good at something at first, but if you keep working at it, you might, even if you're not good at it, you might really enjoy it. So that's like the worst thing that can happen is just not being good at it. But I think, again, if you're having fun, if you're happy doing it, like, continue on that trajectory, and you'll surprise yourself too. I could barely run 20 minutes straight when I first, joined running. And I didn't know if that was going to be, something I was going to be good at, but I loved the space of people that I was with. I liked the way that running made me feel. I didn't have any expectations with it. And that's so cool to have like an experience like that where you don't have expectations. You can just try this thing. If it doesn't stick, then you can move on to the next thing. And that's something that has kept me going and trying new things all the time, is like, it doesn't have to be permanent. It can just be a fleeting moment.
Give yourself grace. I love that you said that, because we all kind of hold ourselves to these standards. And in actuality, none of us are meeting those standards. It's like so hard, and life is hard in general. And I like the piece that you were just sharing around outing the inner critic in a way, just kind of saying to yourself and to others, like, hey, this is feeling awkward to me. Like, I've never run before. And then that gives other people the opportunity to meet you there. So you might have one person in the community say, wow, I felt the same way as you did, but I kept going. And like you were saying, like, I don't know if I was able to do this amount of time in running, and now I can do this amount of time. So it's like just outing that helps other people kind of connect. And maybe there's someone else in the community that says, hey, I'm exactly where you are right now. And like, I barely made it out of the house. There's connection as well. So it's like really about exactly what you were saying, that vulnerability in those spaces, outing that inner critic by just saying like, hey, it's coming up for me too. And that gives us deeper connections, which is what decreases that feeling of loneliness. If we're willing to push past the shame. I think that's the biggest piece, is a lot of us think that we're the only ones that feels a certain way, but really this is a shared human experience. So thank you for just sharing vulnerably, because so many people I think are kind of stuck in that place of like, yeah, I want to, but then it's like, but here are all the barriers. So it's nice that you're able to put yourself out there. The next question is, how do we sustain our connection to our community? So of course, with every step that we take, it makes us feel more confident. But for some of us, depression or feeling sad, feeling anxious, feeling lonely, even those thoughts that we talked about, those sort of self-critical thoughts can keep us from connecting further. So what would you say to someone that's like, oh, I tried it, but I don't know how I feel about keeping up with these connections, or I don't know how I feel about continuing to connect to these communities?
I think you just have to keep putting yourself into different communities until it feels right. Like I have struggled my entire life with like social anxiety, and it's really hard for me to put myself out there a lot of times. But I've realized that the people that really resonate with you and the people that are going to stick around and be there for you are the people that understand you. And like I have social anxiety, so like I need to remove myself from, really big crowds, and like when a lot is going on I get really stressed. And so my friends know that, like the people that I have met with and the people that I hold close to me are the people that understand completely that I need to remove myself from a very boisterous, very loud situation. And they are so supportive of the fact that like I am an introvert, and sometimes I just won't. I'm not very good at communicating, via text or via phone all the time. So setting up like a consistent schedule of like seeing my friends, and that gives me something to look forward to. So every Thursday, like doing like a wine night, or like having just a space for everybody to come together, and like knowing kind of what that environment is going to look like, that really helps with my social anxiety. At least like knowing the people that are going to be there, the setting that it's going to be in, what we're going to be eating, drinking, what kind of activities we're going to partake in, that really helps me in my social anxiety. So yeah, there's certain steps that you can take, and there's certain communities that really will understand that and feel the same exact way. So that is something that I wish to extend to everybody. As we just keep putting yourself out there, because there are people out there that feel the same way as you do.
Thank you for sharing about social anxiety, because so many of us have that same experience, and we may think really it's an opportunity for us to just get rid of it. But for people who have social anxiety, it's more just around managing it, like you said, figuring out what spaces feel comfortable for you, figuring out exactly what you're saying, the consistency of the space, the safeties of the space, but it keeps you consistent in your connection with others. And I love that it's not something that sort of deters you from engaging with your community. You just have to manage it differently, and you're able to do that quite well. So I think that will be inspiring for many people. So Emma, this has been a great conversation. So again, this topic today was how to find your people. And so Emma and I both have our separate communities, and I feel grateful that you and I were connected today to have this conversation, just because it is such an important topic around loneliness. And Emma and I have, through this conversation, created our own little community. And I just feel so inspired by your journey, not only with running, but your journey just inward, finding yourself, finding your confidence, really listening to your inner compass. And I'm so glad that you were able to have the conversation with me today. And so many are going to benefit from it. So thank you, Emma, for being here.
Thank you so much for having me on, and I hope somebody out there learned a little bit of something about themselves or how to kind of go forward.
So on behalf of Wondermind, we're so happy to have this conversation about feelings, about loneliness, and about how to find your people. So we hope that you found some tidbit today that makes you want to step out there and connect to others, or just connect more deeply with yourself. So thank you.